Hi, everyone, and welcome to House of Lou. I'm your host, Veronica Theodoro. This episode of House of Lou is sponsored by Habitat for Humanity. Today, I'm talking about a subject that's relevant to all of us: trees. They're everywhere, outside our windows, in public spaces, and in and around our neighborhoods. Whether we think about it much or not, trees give us so much. Shade from the heat, food for animals and insects, and increased walkability of our streets, to name just a few. Mike Sestric of Trees, Forests, and Landscapes in Kirkwood is my guest on the podcast today. I wanted to talk to Mike because I think we can all stand to learn more about trees, how to care for them, and what types of questions to ask yourself and the experts if you're thinking about making an investment in one or more for your home or business. For the past 30 years, he's worked in tree care operations in both California and Missouri. In addition to his new role as president of Trees, Forests, and Landscapes, Mike serves on various boards, including as president of the Midwest chapter of the International Society of Arboriculture and president of the St. Louis Arborist Association. He's a board-certified master arborist, among other niche specialties. Today, he's going to help dispel some of the mystery surrounding trees and share his knowledge about how we can best care for the ones that we have in our own backyard. I'm excited to chat with Mike, but first, here's what's been going on with me in and around my house. The biggest news from me is that my house is about to get a lot quieter. Next week, I'm taking my daughter to college to start her freshman year. And while I'm super excited for her to begin this next phase, I know I'm also going to really miss her. So to prepare myself, I've started running and swimming laps again. I might finally join that book club that my friends have been wanting me to do for a while now. Anything's possible, I guess, but I definitely feel like we're turning the page and beginning a new chapter. Before any of that happens, though, I've been spending a lot of time in my daughter's closet and rifling through her drawers to reclaim the clothes that she's borrowed from me over the years, and looking for things that she no longer uses and that I can either donate or sell. So I'm going to link to some of my favorite local organizations and resale shops in the show notes. Be sure to check those out if you're looking for a second home for your things too. And since we're talking about trees today, I want to be sure to mention the City of St. Louis's Street Tree Planting Program. The Forestry Division helps homeowners select, plant, and purchase trees for the tree lawn, which is the area between the curb and the sidewalk. Citizens can request a tree or more than one tree by calling the Citizens Service Bureau. I'll be sure to link to them and add their phone number, as well as lots of other resources about trees in the show notes. We'll be right back. Did you know Habitat for Humanity St. Louis restores are open to the public? Anyone can shop and donate for new and used building materials, furniture, and home improvement supplies. Find your bargain at Habitat for Humanity Restores while also supporting affordable housing right here in St. Louis. To learn about store locations and hours of operation, visit habitatstl.org. Welcome back, everyone. We've got a lot to cover today with Mike, so let's get started. Hi, Mike.
Hey, how are you?
So good to see you.
It's good to be here.
Yeah, welcome to the podcast. I'm curious to know, what about trees is so interesting to you?
I think it's just the importance that they really serve to us as far as, they're huge air filters. They're huge water filters. It's scientifically proven that they're good for our mental health, not just for the shade reasons, but for just a lot of times when you feel almost covered or protected in an area. That's what a tree is doing for you. Temperature cools, blood pressure goes down a lot of times, and just the movement and the wind can be of some good help to everyone. So I think that's the main thing for me anyway.
What are you doing on a typical day?
I could be meeting with clients, taking a look, diagnosing some trees, maybe in the fall and spring, what's known as flagging a spot, meaning going out, meeting with the client, pinpointing exactly where they'd like a new tree, helping the crews if they need it. A lot of times now they're happier if I'm not there because I just get in the way. But if they need a hand, I need to get out there and help them.
I've heard that the fall season in particular is a good time to plant a tree. Is that true?
Yeah, there is definitely fall can be a very good time. Lately, with the temperature gradient changes, it's been a little tougher and also depends on the species. If you're thinking about planting an evergreen, you want to do it early fall. Give them a chance to root in and kind of get established. Trees that go dormant as far as deciduous, oaks, maples, things like that, you can plant a little later. And it's still critical to make sure you water in the fall. A lot of people think, oh, it's getting cooler, you shouldn't have to worry about it, but you do, especially we've been having a lot drier winters and falls. So watering those trees in regularly, anything from 1 to 2 times a week, even though it doesn't look like it's doing anything, there's a lot going on underground that needs that moisture. So fall is a good time. Spring is better for some particular plants. Red buds, things, dogwoods, we like to see going in the spring. If you want an evergreen, spruce are a popular item right about now, and southern magnolia is another one because people are wanting screening. We like to get those in the spring. If people are just really dead set on they'd like it in the fall, you try to do them first and make sure they know they do have to care for them as soon as they go in the ground.
So, what are some of the most common questions that you hear from St. Louisans about trees?
The number one question is, what's wrong with my tree? And by that time, we get there and something may have been acting up for a couple years. That's the big one. I'd say after that, it's questions about proper pruning. We've been having a lot of good information out there and people are taking advantage of as far as the timing of pruning a tree, timing of planting. They want to know, where is a good place to plant one? Is this, I really like this tree. Will it work? So there's been a lot of really great questions, but I say the number one is, what's wrong with my tree?
What are you finding?
Pathogens are the number one. Pathogens mean usually fungal, viral, or bacterial. Fungal, the number one issues we've been seeing a lot of is root fungus issues, something called Phytophthora. There's 2 genus of those. We've seen the amount of trees dealing with that. And what it does is it's almost like plaque in your arteries. It gets in, and it's a very strong fungus, so it's able to spread laterally into the cells and blocks the vascular tissue. So you'll see some staining. If caught early, it is treatable.
Okay.
Look for little staining, and sometimes it's just a tiny little spot you're not sure of. There's something else called bacterial wetwood, which looks very similar, but that's not a big deal. We're attributing that to it's just getting a lot more stressful for trees to grow, especially our natives, because there's climate change going on. I don't care about your political affiliation. Plants don't care either. We're seeing things that we wouldn't have planted before, we're able to plant now because it's warmer.
Oh, interesting. So you are seeing impact locally on trees as a result of warmer seasons.
Oh, for sure. There are things we wouldn't have planted before, like I mentioned, that we do now because they're doing better. But our concern is Missouri is famous for our oak and hickory forest. Our black walnut is wanted worldwide as far as harvesting for beautiful old walnut furniture. I mean, a lot of it came from right here in Missouri, and you'll see things that were harvested and taken across the ocean. Europe's got a lot of our stuff. Our white oak for wine casks, whiskey barrels, everything that they want in Missouri because of the way our soil chemistry is. It makes great stuff. But we are concerned, is it a plague? I don't want to alarm anybody and say, oh, we're going to lose everything. We're not. But as arborists, we see it, and especially in urban situations because the stressors are a lot more. Out in the forest, you don't see nearly as much of the problem. And St. Louis is just such a weird weather place.
Yeah.
You see the storm fronts moving in, and then it's like, they split, go right around us, and then build back up over in Illinois, or we just get hammered. And, we get 4 inches in 6 hours.
Are you planting certain species now that you may not have been, 15 years ago?
Yeah, we're planting more southern magnolia. When I first started 20 years ago with this company, we would have planted some, but now they're doing so well, people are using them for screening.
Okay.
As opposed to whereas before, there's a lot of arborvitae and things like that. Some of the bigger crepe myrtle, we haven't planted any in a couple years, but they're surviving and doing well, getting large. Some of the white and pink varieties are both doing well. So just plants that, typically were more southern
Right.
are slowly getting, but that's also because different varieties have been bred to do better in what they call colder climates, different zones. As you progress up the country, the zones get different.
So, how do you advise homeowners to start thinking about the types of trees that they might want to plant in their yards? Like, what questions should we all be asking ourselves and the experts?
I know it's a common, again, I'm referencing all of your past wonderful podcasts here.
Well, thanks.
But,
I'm so glad you've listened.
No, I'm a fan now because, I just didn't know before, now that I wasn't. It's so interesting to hear, interior designers, exterior people that we have a lot of the same processes that we go through. And the number one, someone referenced it as design 101. And you find out what their goals are.
Right.
And what the space they have. Try to come in with something that's going to work for them and find out how much work they want to put into it. Some people love that's their thing. They want to be out in their garden. That's their therapy.
Yes.
Put in some earbuds, listen to their favorite music, or listen to nothing and just mess around in the garden and find the space and what they really want, what their goals are. If they just want a little color, maybe, put something small. If they're planning on this is going to be their forever home, maybe someday they'll be able to give it to their kids or grandkids. They're going to plant something that could live 100 to 200 years. So you really just listen. For somebody that talks as much as I do, sometimes that's hard, but you need to, and just find the right match for them and give them selections. Some people really have something in mind that they want, but they won't come right out and say it because they want to know if it'll work. And I might not say, let's say they want a white oak. I might not say that because it's a slower growing tree, but then later they'll say, oh, I was really hoping we could have a white oak. I'm like, well, you can. That just didn't come out right away. So make sure they have their goals and just be honest with whoever comes out and meets with you. Make sure that they're paying attention and look at the spots. You don't want to come in and have to do a huge yard project to change the grade and do all this crazy stuff and change the drainage. Figure out what's going to work there. Like in St. Louis, a lot of our soils are very old.
Yes.
We've been around old neighborhoods. So the soil's pretty established. Drainage patterns might have changed, but you look what's there and you really try to fit the best thing. And so if a homeowner has a particular goal, state it right away. Say, this is really what I'd like to have.
Okay.
Can we do that? You figure out a way.
Can you recommend some sources or books or websites where people might just be able to go for inspiration?
Forest Keeling is one. They're a grower, but they have a fantastic catalog with
yes,
with good descriptions. And Missouri Botanical Garden,
obviously,
great.
yes.
They've
Also.
got some really good native sources and some exotics. Not invasive. Just because something's not from here doesn't mean it's going to attack everything.
Do you take into account the architecture of a home?
If a home is much more angular and linear, you just ask the homeowner, do you like this? Do you want this to look like the Palace of Versailles, where it's extremely ornate? You've got something that you're going to have to snip every couple hours because it's moved a bit.
Right.
Or if you've got a sprawling home, do you want something that's going to get big over the house and shaded eventually? Or do you want something that's going to be a little more lateral? Absolutely, yeah. And also what we try to do is ask the people if they have some views they really like of a particular room.
Okay.
The dining room, everybody's sitting around, they're looking out the window. We don't want to look into our neighbor's kitchen anymore.
Right.
So maybe find something that will grow a little narrow, block that view, give them some greenery to look at. Or if they have a place that they don't want to block, they love the fact that they can see, their dog running around the backyard out this window, or they've got young kids and I don't want this blocked because I can keep an eye on them while they're playing outside. So look at it from the outside as well as the inside.
Oh, that's a really good point. It's difficult to, I guess, pinpoint trees for all St. Louisans because there's so much that goes into account. But are there certain species that you feel just do really well in this particular zone?
Yeah, for sure. It does depend on the size of the yard, but I'm a fan of redbud. It's a simple native. There's a few different varieties that have, there's a variety called Merlot and forest pansy, which has a bit more of a crimson leaf and it gets dark green in the later summer months. That's a good durable tree. Our oaks are good, our native oaks. Overcup is a nice one. The trend, unfortunately, is when we try to talk to people about oaks, is if they may not have the space. And we're seeing a lot of people say, I don't have to deal with all the acorns. I'm like, well, everything is going to be dropping something at some point in time. If you've got room, you plant it away from the walk or something like that. But our young oaks grow pretty quickly. As they age, they slow down. The young oak will put on a foot of growth a year, no problem, once it's established. So those are some good native trees. We're seeing little dogwoods are getting a little more finicky. Our flowering dogwood, which is a beautiful plant, But we're just with the temperature gradient changes, we're seeing a little more trouble with them.
Oh,
And
really?
saturated soils. Again, you need to look at the drainage pattern, and planting depth is really critical on them. You want to plant them high.
Are there some that are perhaps overlooked? I mean, I think we all love the magnolias,
Hmm.
but is there a tree that's overlooked that you maybe wish St. Louisans would take a second look at?
Oh yeah, for sure. I like our Native American hornbeam. It's really
Mm,
nice.
yes.
It's got a very pretty orangish red fall color. Even the bark in the winter used to be called musclewood because it looks very sinewy. I really like it, and there's a new variety that's very tightly formed columnar. And since it is a variety of our American hornbeam, it doesn't have the pest issues that we see with the European columnar hornbeam. You see it used a lot in the landscape. So I really like those. I love American fringe tree. Some people
Okay.
call it the white fringe. Beautiful, very delicate looking flower, great for pollinators. Another one that will take full sun, can grow in kind of crummy soils too. And I keep saying crummy because, in my yard, I live in South City. I like ginkgo, the fall color. That one, the tricky thing about ginkgo, it's very slow grower, but it really doesn't have much to offer to native wildlife.
Oh, okay.
So unless you get a fruiting one, and the fruit of the ginkgo does not smell good at all.
Okay.
It's pretty gross.
I didn't know that ginkgo was a fruit tree.
Well, then you've been lucky.
But I do know that people seem to be interested in planting fruit trees a little
Mhm.
bit more. I don't know if there's like a romantic element, right?
Yep.
That you like can pick a lemon or a
Hmm.
lime off of the tree in your
Yeah.
backyard. Do fruit trees grow well in St. Louis?
They can be a little tricky as far as they get a lot of fruit and leaf fungal issues. Um, so there's definitely some more durable varieties out there. But I mean, if you think about it, growing up, I don't know if you grew up in St. Louis, but everybody always talked about going to Eckert's. Now, Illinois has wonderful soil, but the big thing is you want to give them space. They need to have some good airflow. If you want to have a fruit tree, you got to be ready for some aggressive pruning. It's almost scary
Okay.
to really get them to flower and fruit well. And but yeah, I mean, apples,
Mhm.
pretty good one. There is a cherry tree in the botanical garden, in the Japanese garden. It's a white cherry, and it's old, but it's some of the best cherries I've ever had. So you can have it, and it's not even. It's kind of tucked off to the side, so it's not like a big showpiece tree where everybody's taking care of it nonstop.
Right.
But I have a friend that's worked there for a long time, so we're just a couple of old tree nerds, and they call him, Mike, the white cherry's flowering. All right, so I'll meet him down there, and we'll hang out and do nerdy tree stuff like that. But yeah, peach also. But again, the big thing, if you're looking to stay away from fungicides and insecticides, the biggest thing is going to be proper pruning and just lots of good airflow around there.
And you mentioned bark in
Hmm.
your previous answer. And I think that that's an element of trees that many of us don't really pay attention to. What can you tell me about bark and the different types of bark and what might make a bark more interesting to look at over another one, for example?
I think it's kind of an underappreciated part of the plant. Some trees, I mean, there's something called a paper bark maple. That's its name. It's got this beautiful coppery kind of exfoliating bark. It's a slow grower. Even the leaf is very nice. There's a lace bark pine, which has this mottled green and tan spotting as it gets bigger. I mentioned the hornbeam. It's got a great bark to it, kind of gray and sinewy looking. And there's something called ironwood, which is a little more reddish to it. It's very attractive as well. Sycamores, people, they drop a lot of leaves and the bark that sometimes people don't like. But if you ever just kind of stop and look at it, I mean, it's this stark white silhouette. And like in a gloomy kind of winter sky, you look up like, kind of
Yeah.
stands out. Persian Perodia is one that it was very popular for a while, but I imagine the same thing with design and home architecture and building architecture trends come and go.
Sure.
And, but it's got a really neat bark too. Some of the bigger, like our oaks, will have just big, gnarly, kind of knotty, different patchy. Post oaks will have different patches of bark that are pretty interesting. The eastern cottonwood, which is our big, what's referred to as riparian, the river species, but they'll have, ridges this big in there. And and there's so much going on just in between those little bits of bark. There's just so much going on in between all of them. So it can definitely be part of the design because if it's deciduous, it's nice to have something to kind of stand out
Sure.
in the wintertime too to add.
For sure. What are some of the trends that you see in trees?
Big one is screening. privacy.
Okay.
It's always kind of been there, I just want to screen this view. I tell you what really, I think, tripped it off. Well, I know we see the trends and we were able to continue working at that time, but COVID. And so everybody they're like, forget it. This is going to be my happy little sanctuary. So screening, privacy. So that's why you see just these kind of cookie cutter LAs of Green Giant, Arborvitae. Those are the real popular ones. They serve as great quick screen. We try to convince people into looking at it from different angles, maybe do a little bit here, open it up. But yeah, the privacy, the screenings. For a while, it was the Japanese style garden.
Okay.
People really liked that. Japanese maples were big and they were looking for ways, but lately it's been privacy.
Do you find that homeowners in St. Louis enjoy caring for their trees? They're curious about trees, or do you find yourself having to educate quite a bit?
I've been so impressed and happy with my fellow St. Louisans over the past 20 years. People who give us a call, they either want to know more or they already know a lot and they're into it and they get it. And because it's an investment, either
Sure.
you're planting or you're caring for it. There are formulas out there that you can determine exactly how much money it's adding to your property. Value.
Really?
Yep. And I'll tell you what I'm really getting excited about is, as an old fogey myself, the younger people, it's just ingrained in them, the importance of
The
plants,
environment.
trees, and the importance, even if they don't, they're starting out, they may not have a ton of money, which is fine. But they're like, we want to keep this one. We really like this tree.
Oh, that's great.
And they're getting ahead of the game by calling in because they're like, we don't know if it's healthy or not. And so, and a lot of times they're like, it looks great. Whatever you are doing or not doing, stay on it.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Mike, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And now on to V's Views. The annual Preserving What's Right event on September 22nd celebrates the Frank Lloyd Wright House in Ebsworth Park and St. Louis modernism at the Mildred Lane Kemper Art Museum on WashU's campus. Tickets are $150 each and include a first look at the museum's exhibit, Design Agendas, Modern Architecture in St. Louis from the 1930s to the 1970s. If you're a homeowner living in O'Fallon Park, Fairgrounds, Kingsway East, Ville, and the Greater Ville neighborhoods in St. Louis City, you'll definitely want to take note of this event. Treesilience Orientation is a program that helps homeowners improve their community's tree canopy. During a 2-hour orientation on September 21st, attendees will learn how. The Belleville Historical Society is hosting its Mid-Century Modern House Tour on October 20th, featuring 8 mid-century homes. Tickets are available the day of at the Museum of Mid-Century Modern Architecture in Belleville and in advance at Fletcher's Kitchen and Tap. Thanks for listening to the House of Lou podcast. Be sure to follow us and share the episodes with your friends. Be in touch. Subscribe to our design and home newsletter at stlmag.com/newsletters and follow along on Instagram at St. Louis Mag. You can follow me at VT Lookbook. If you loved what you heard, show us some love by rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you choose to listen. We'll see you next time. And just remember, there's so much to see in St. Louis if you know where to look.